And that sound means we're back for another week of American football news, this edition of College American Football News. All right, for those of you who are just tuning in, we just completed our last week of college football, and the newest selection of college football playoff eligible teams have just come in, and the newest top 25 list is also in. And we will go over the top 25 list and the top 4 college football playoff teams here in one moment. The College Football Selection Committee has made up their minds, and a new number 4 team is in. So if the college football playoffs were to start tomorrow, these would be the 4 teams that would be getting in. Number 1, as has been all year, at undefeated 9-0, the Alabama Crimson Tide, shutting out the Louisiana Tigers this past weekend and definitely earning that number 1 spot overall. Number 2, Clemson, also 9-0, who had a whipping to lay on the Louisville Cardinal and won this past Saturday 77-16. Coming in at number 3, moving up 1 spot, the University of Notre Dame, also undefeated, coming off a win over Northwestern 31-21. And our newest and final candidate in the college football playoff world, the University of Michigan, who has moved up 1 spot, who is 8-1 on the year, their only loss coming to Notre Dame. And they beat the hell out of the Nittany Lions this past weekend, 42-7. Coming in at number 5, the Georgia Bulldogs. Number 6, Oklahoma. 7, LSU. 8, Washington State. 9, West Virginia. And rounding out the top 10 is Ohio State. Right behind them, the University of Kentucky. Number 12, University of Central Florida. Number 13, Syracuse. 14, North Carolina State. 15, Florida. 16, Mississippi State. 17, Boston College. 18, Michigan State, working their way back into the top 25. 19, Texas. 20, Penn State. 21, Iowa. 22, Iowa State. 23, Fresno State. 24, Auburn. And finishing out our top 25 for this week is the University of Washington with their big win over Stanford this past weekend. Speaking of this past weekend, we have several scores to go over. Blowouts, close games, overtimes, everything that you could ever want happened this past weekend, and we will be looking at a few of those games from Week 10. The biggest blowout of the day was, of course, the number 2 Clemson Tigers taking on the Louisville Cardinal. Clemson really having no problem with the Cardinal racking up 11 touchdowns or 77 points as they pounded the Cardinal 77-16. The Syracuse Orange continued their improbable season, doing very, very well on the year, ranked 13th overall, having no problem with Wake Forest this past weekend, ended up beating them 41-24. Another game that was a bit of a surpriser, especially considering the teams that were playing. Ohio State took on the Nebraska Cornhuskers this year, and Nebraska has underperformed to say the least. Hopes were high for former quarterback Frost to take over the Cornhuskers as head coach. However, things haven't really worked out to their advantage so far. Ohio State pulls out a squeaker against Nebraska, 36-31, and it is this reporter's insight that if Ohio State has any hopes of beating Michigan in that final game of the Big Ten regular season, games like Nebraska and Purdue will not get you victories. So good luck to the Buckeyes this next weekend, but hopefully they get their things together before that very important matchup with the University of Michigan. Another close game that took place this weekend, the number 24 Auburn Tigers defeated the Texas A&M Aggies 28-24. In Big Ten play, the then-ranked number 21 Iowa Hawkeyes lost to Purdue. A bit of an upstart team in the Big Ten. It was my prediction at the beginning of the year that the Purdue Boilermakers would be playing for a Big Ten title. However, we have yet to see Purdue put on anything consistently, and that is in serious doubt and jeopardy at this point. One of the better games that took place this weekend, actually a couple of them, The number 5 Georgia Bulldogs took on an upstart number 11 Kentucky Wildcats. Kentucky really known more for basketball than anything else, but surprises people once in a while with an okay football team. However, this is a great football team, and the fact that they're almost in the top 10 is nothing short of amazing. However, the Bulldogs were able to hold their own and laid it thick on the Wildcats. The Bulldogs ended up winning 34-17. Two more ranked opponents that went at it this weekend. The West Virginia Mountaineers played the Texas Longhorns in a thriller of a game. Both these teams went back and forth, lots of offense, no defense. So if you like scoring points and watching teams run up the scoreboard, then this was the game for you. West Virginia pulls out a last-minute squeaker and wins by 42-41. Now, if you were like me, you were looking forward to this next Big Ten matchup. Seemingly Michigan's only tough matchup before Ohio State at the end of the year. Penn State able to hold their own against Michigan over the last several years, but not this time. The Nittany Lions marched into Ann Arbor and to the Big House expecting to knock the Wolverines off. However, Michigan's very, very tough defense and explosive offense took over the game. By the end of it, and when the dust was settled, there was only one winner, and it was a big winner. The Michigan Wolverines knock off the Penn State Nittany Lions 42-7. Ouch. Another game that a lot of us were looking forward to was the Alabama-LSU game. This game had huge implications. It was going to determine who wins the SEC. It was going to determine if Alabama was for real this year. And it was going to determine if LSU was good this year or for real this year. All those questions were answered. Unfortunately, all of the answers were Alabama-related. Alabama is that good. LSU really isn't that good. And Alabama is very real this year. They shut out, repeat that, shut out the LSU Tigers 29-0. And I don't know if LSU is going to be able to recover from that whooping laid on them this past weekend. With Week 11 coming up, we have several games to take a look at, and we will give you American Football News's top picks and the top games to keep an eye on this next weekend. So if you're in front of your TV and you're able to catch one of these games, be sure to pay attention closely, and when we say we told you so, just remember American Football Newz was there to say it first. If you're a Big Ten fan, then there's really only one game to pay attention to this weekend, and it's the Ohio State Buckeyes taking on the Michigan State Spartans at Spartan Stadium. You can catch this game on Fox, and it is set for a noon kickoff Saturday, November 10th. The Spartans sitting 6-3 on the year, Ohio State 8-1, Michigan State punching their ticket for a college bowl game later on this year. Ohio State trying to stay strong enough to take on those mighty Michigan Wolverines in that ever-critical regular season final game. It is our prediction that Ohio State will win this game, but don't be surprised if D'Antonio and the Spartans don't make a run for it. They've held their own against Ohio State before and have won games that they probably shouldn't have. But again, it is our prediction that the Ohio State Buckeyes will come out victorious in East Lansing at Spartan Stadium. One of the next games to keep an eye on this next weekend is an SEC matchup, and once again features the Alabama Crimson Tide, this time taking on the Mississippi State Bulldogs. The Bulldogs, no powerhouse by any means, but you never know. Football is a weird sport like that and can surprise anybody and everybody. This will take place Saturday, November 10th. Kickoff is scheduled for 3:30 p.m., and you can catch this game on CBS. However, it is our prediction that the Crimson Tide, just like everybody else this last year, will have no problem with the Mississippi State Bulldogs. Another game to keep your eye on this next weekend is another SEC game. The number 24 Auburn Tiger will take on the number 5 Georgia Bulldog. You can catch that game on ESPN. It will take place Saturday, November 10th. Kickoff scheduled for 7 p.m. The Bulldogs, one of those teams on the outside looking in. Really, really hoping for the teams above them to falter in some sort of way. However, that's a tall order at this point in time in the season. And the Tigers just trying to stay alive enough to get to a decent bowl game later on this year. It's our prediction that the Bulldogs will be able to handle the Tigers this next Saturday. Our final game to keep an eye on, in the top 25, that is anyways, this next weekend, will be an ACC matchup. We haven't mentioned too many ACC matchups this year. However, this will be a good one. The number 2 Clemson Tiger will take on the Boston College Eagles Saturday, November 10th. That game's scheduled for an 8 p.m. kickoff. You can catch that game on ABC. And don't be surprised if the Eagles really give Clemson a run for their money. Clemson struggled a couple times this year to teams that they probably shouldn't have. And this is a very good Boston College Eagles team with a very good running back. You might see an upset here, so don't be surprised if the Eagles are the ones who come out victorious. Speaking of running backs and very good players, we are on to the Heisman Hopefuls section of the show. We track the top 4 candidates and give you updates and new numbers and our prediction as to who will win week to week. The number 1 Heisman Trophy candidate is Tua Tagovailoa, quarterback, Alabama. Last week against LSU, he had a fairly good day, 295 yards passing, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception, and put on another 50 yards on the ground with a rushing touchdown for that shutout win over LSU. His 2018 season numbers are pretty okay. 2,361 yards passing, 27 touchdowns, and 1 interception on the year, with 172 yards rushing on the ground and 3 rushing touchdowns. He's done pretty well. He is a freshman, so you got to keep that into consideration. And the quality of opponents hasn't been as high as some of these other players playing for other teams. However, he is still the favorite, and that 1 interception, 27 touchdown ratio definitely helps. Our number 2 Heisman Trophy candidate has pretty much stayed number 2 the entire year, moving down once and then back up. Kyler Murray, quarterback from Oklahoma, had a very, very good game against Texas Tech. 360 yards passing, 3 touchdowns. However, he threw 2 interceptions, bringing his grand total to 5 interceptions on the year. However, that was overshadowed by his 100 yards rushing on the ground and 1 touchdown rushing. His 2018 stats are better than the number 1 candidate, 2,689 yards passing, 31 touchdowns, 5 interceptions, with 574 yards on the ground and 7 touchdowns. This kid reminds me a lot of current Cleveland Browns quarterback, and the way that he plays, the way that he runs, and the way that he's able to add extra time when he's flushed out of the pocket, and he's still my number 1 pick to win it overall at the end of the year. Our number 3 candidate is up a couple spots. Yet again, another quarterback, Will Grier from the University of West Virginia, is our number 3 Heisman Trophy candidate this week, and had a big week against the University of Texas. 346 yards passing, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions. Very little on the ground, but he's not your typical running quarterback. He's your old school drop back, sit in the pocket type thrower. Very good stats, very similar to Kyler Murray ahead of him. His 2018 season stats so far are 2,618 yards passing, 28 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. However, what hurts him the most is his rushing numbers. Not that a quarterback should rush, but his aren't very good either. Negative 65 yards rushing, but he does have a rushing touchdown. This doesn't necessarily hurt him, but it doesn't necessarily help him either. He's good at number 3, and he has a tough matchup this next weekend coming up against Texas Christian University. Our number 4, we won't be able to go over in any detail with, but it's Gardner Minshew, quarterback from Washington State. Very good stats on the year. All right, we are coming up on the last 17 seconds of our episode. Thank you for listening. Stay tuned for our Pro Edition, and be sure to catch those games this next weekend on the NCAA college football circuit.